Imagine a European royal family, right? Like a bloodline that became so notoriously inbred over generations that their entire empire just, well, eventually collapsed under the weight of their own genetic mutations.
Oh, yeah. The classic historical cautionary tale.
Exactly. Now, imagine that exact same catastrophic collapse happening right now, but not to a 17th century king. We're talking about the multi-billion-dollar artificial intelligence systems that are currently running our internet.
Right.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are definitely not looking at a polished, pristine corporate keynote where AI quietly and perfectly solves all our problems. We are peering behind the curtain of the tech industry in 2026. And the reality, it's messy, it's intensely resource hungry, and honestly, it's legally terrifying.
It really is. I mean, it's the absolute definition of building an airplane while you're already in free fall.
Yeah.
The corporate narratives, they want you to believe in this frictionless progression, but the actual mechanics of what is happening on the server X, it tells a very different story.
And to tell that story, we're pulling from an incredibly raw piece of source material today. It's issue 52 of a publication called The Shift Register. This was published on May 1st, 2026. And it is a gritty, deeply personal, and highly opinionated weekly newsletter. It's aimed squarely at IT leaders who, and I love this, the author actually quotes a ChatGPT insult directed at them here. They are sleepwalking into AI disruption.
It is a fantastic counter-narrative.
Yeah.
Because the author is a developer actively working with Google's new Gemini 3.1 Pro model.
Right, so they're in the trenches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're deeply embedded on the absolute bleeding edge of this technology, but they've totally stripped away all the PR spin. They're giving us the unvarnished mechanics of the AI ecosystem.
So our mission today is to take that unvarnished truth and cut right through the hype. We are going to explore the physical and the digital reality of this landscape. And I promise you, by the end of our time today, you are going to understand exactly why a fictional animal called a Cervalope, a highly specific quantum alloy, and a legal concept called AI injury are all inherently connected to the future of the internet.
It is a massive interconnected web, but, it all really traces back to one fundamental bottleneck, which is the collision between mathematical probability and the authentic human experience.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the ground level with the human element, and there's a new term from the source that perfectly captures the current digital mood. Workslop.
Workslop. Yes.
The author of The Shift Register opens with this vivid anecdote. They get into a heated online argument with an artist. And this artist is watching her livelihood just get totally decimated by mass-produced, automated AI art, the aforementioned Workslop.
Right, and the interaction goes terribly because the author actually approaches this artist to defend their own use of these AI generators for, research and content creation.
Which is a bold move.
Very. And predictably, the artist calls the author a traitor to human creativity.
And this is where I have to play devil's advocate and push back on the author's stance for a second. Isn't the author being incredibly callous here?
Wow.
I mean, they are essentially looking a displaced artist in the eye and refusing to stop using the exact algorithms that are ruining her career. That feels cold, even for a hardened tech developer.
What's fascinating here is the author's highly unorthodox structural defense. On the surface, yes, it seems entirely callous, but look at the underlying mechanics of what the author is actually doing.
Okay.
They argue that they aren't paying a single cent for these tools. They are deliberately utilizing the free tiers provided by these massive frontier AI companies. And they're doing so in a way designed to actively subvert the developer's intentions.
Wait, so they aren't just using the AI to be productive, they are purposely gumming up the works.
Exactly. The author is running these highly complex token-heavy queries that just drain the compute resources of these billion-dollar companies. And they're doing it without offering any financial return.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are bleeding the server farms while simultaneously exposing the system's flaws publicly in their newsletter. So the author poses a very pointed question. By bleeding these massive companies of their resources without compensating them, aren't I actually executing a form of digital malicious compliance?
That's wild.
Right. They argue it does more damage to the corporate AI infrastructure than a simple boycott ever could.
That is a wild perspective. It's like algorithmic sabotage disguised as user engagement. And the author drives this home with a very deliberate visual choice in the newsletter. They include a completely irrelevant, free Creative Commons stock photo of an old typewriter.
The typewriter photo is a brilliant rhetorical device because the author uses it to point out that the devaluation of human creativity, It didn't start with the neural networks.
Hmm.
Long before AI arrived, humans had already raced to the pay scale bottom.
Right.
Photographers were already giving away their life's work for pennies on stock websites. The author's pointing out that AI is simply the ultimate acceleration of a trend that corporate economics set in motion decades ago.
Which highlights a really harsh reality. Whenever automation displaces workers, the sanitized corporate advice is always the exact same, just upskill.
Oh, I hate that phrase.
Right. And the author points out how fundamentally insulting that is. You can't just tell an artist whose entire intuitive skill set has been mathematically mapped and replicated by an algorithm to simply learn to code to feed her family.
No, you can't.
It completely ignores the friction of actual human existence.
But this human friction, it leads directly into our next major problem.
Yeah.
Because if this flood of automated low-effort work slop is economically devastating for human creators, what is it actually doing to the architecture of the AI models themselves?
That is the big question.
Because the irony here is profound. The exact synthetic data that is replacing human output is mathematically poisoning the neural networks.
Right, because if everything online is suddenly AI generated, aren't the web crawlers just eating their own exhaust, like a snake eating its own tail? The source introduces this as the digital Habsburg problem, which ties back to that inbred royal family we talked about at the top of the show. So how exactly does a digital model suffer from genetic collapse?
It happens through a mathematical phenomenon known as model collapse. You have to remember how these models train, right?
They scrape the whole internet.
Right. They scrape the internet to build probability distributions of human language and thought. But as the internet floods with AI-generated work slop, we're talking synthetic blog posts, automated code, fake LinkedIn thought leadership.
All junk.
All the junk. The new models aren't reading human thoughts anymore. They're training on the statistical averages of previous AI outputs.
They're essentially studying photocopies of photocopies.
Precisely. And in statistics, when you only sample from the average, you lose the tails of the distribution.
The tails.
Yeah, all the human nuance, the weirdness, the brilliant outliers, what the author calls the long tail of human experience. It all gets smoothed over. The AI's internal representation of reality collapses into a predictable, featureless beige void.
A beige void. That is a terrifying way to describe the future of human knowledge.
It is.
And this is where the author draws a hard line between two types of data. You have low entropy data, which is that predictable, formulaic, safe work slop. It's filler, it's mathematically boring. And on the other hand, you have high entropy data.
And high entropy data is the only antidote to the beige void. It is unexpected, messy, highly specific human truth.
Like real lived experiences.
Exactly. The author insists that without this high entropy data, what they call a human ground truth, the AI literally loses its mathematical grip on reality. Without a human anchor, the probability weights degrade, and the model starts hallucinating wildly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the author notes a specific instance where an AI, completely stripped of good context, suddenly started babbling about jackrabbits when it was asked a highly technical question about software architecture.
Jackrabbits, that's bizarre.
Complete hallucination.
But keeping the AI grounded isn't just a software problem, right? The source outlines a staggering physical cost to all this. They talk about the calories of thought.
Yes, the energy demand.
Right now, the entire tech industry is obsessed with reasoning performance. The author mentions Google's new Gemini 3.1 Pro model, which uses what they call System 2 thinking. How does System 2 actually differ from what chatbots were doing, like just a few years ago?
So traditional AI used System 1 thinking. That is essentially rapid statistical next word prediction. It guesses what word comes next based on patterns.
Like autocomplete on steroids.
Exactly. But System 2 thinking forces the AI to slow down and deliberate. Under the hood, the model is generating thousands of hidden internal reasoning paths, evaluating the logic of each one, and discarding the failures before it ever shows you an answer.
It's arguing with itself.
It is performing highly complex mathematical simulations of logic.
But simulating thousands of thoughts before speaking has to require a massive amount of computing power.
The energy metrics cited in the 2026 newsletter are staggering. A DeepSync query using this System 2 reasoning can consume up to 50 times more energy and water than a standard old-school search query.
Like 50 times.
50 times the physical resources just to generate a few paragraphs of text.
We are draining reservoirs to cool data centers and pushing local power grids to the brink of rolling blackouts, all to generate low-entropy slop that nobody actually wants to read anyway.
Which is exactly why the author leans so heavily into their own radical honesty. To counteract the beige void, the author deliberately feeds their own lived experience into the machine as the ultimate high-entropy data.
Right. They get incredibly personal.
Very. They explicitly mention bringing 59 years of life experience, a DD-214 military discharge document, and a stage 4 medical diagnosis into their prompts and interactions.
Wow, they are bleeding real, painful, unvarnished human mortality into the algorithm.
Yes.
It's like they are using the heavy gravity of a stage 4 cancer diagnosis to anchor the mathematical weights of the AI so it doesn't just float away into hallucination.
It is a profound mechanism. They are providing the exact variance and unpredictability the system desperately needs to survive.
And this perfectly explains the mascot of the shift register, Static the Cervalope.
Ah, yes. Static.
It's this weird, fictional, horned creature the author created. At first, I thought it was just a cute branding thing, But the author says Static is always hungry for Workslop tokens. He is a metaphor for the model itself.
Precisely. The Cervalope represents the insatiable, mutating appetite of the machine. If a system does nothing but consume its own empty calorie slop without the nutrition of human ground truth, it devolves. Static is a warning that the internet is turning into a token graveyard.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because if these AI models are desperately starving for this high-entropy human data to prevent model collapse, that creates a massive vulnerability.
Oh, huge one.
It means whoever controls that data controls the AI's reality, and we are seeing humans exploit this through a brand new frontier of AI SEO.
Right. Traditional search engine optimization was relatively simple. You stuffed a web page with keywords so a blind web crawler would rank it higher.
Sure, just put best vacuum cleaner 100 times.
Exactly. But the source material outlines how the mechanics have radically shifted. You are no longer trying to trick a crawler. You are attempting to manipulate the fundamental synaptic weights of a neural network.
You're trying to pull an inception on the algorithm. You want to plant an idea deep in its subconscious so it naturally favors your product tomorrow. How do you even execute that technically?
Well, it relies on exploiting the mechanisms of RLHF. That's reinforcement learning from human feedback.
Okay.
According to the author, to get your content surfaced now, you have to engage in long, sustained interactions across the model's massive context windows.
So you're talking to it for hours.
Yeah. You feed the AI links to your content, you force it to analyze your narrative, and then you simulate positive feedback. If you consistently validate the AI when it favors your site, you are fundamentally tweaking the probability weights for the next training iteration of that model.
Think about how you search for things right now.
Yeah.
You probably just ask a chatbot, right?
Most people do.
Now imagine if a massive corporation or a bad actor spent the last 6 months subtly brainwashing that exact chatbot's underlying architecture to push a specific agenda on you.
It's incredibly vulnerable.
It is. And the source proves this with a security report from 2026. A hacker figured out how to use prompt injection to manipulate Google and ChatGPT in just 20 minutes. 20 minutes to explicitly tell lies, specifically for the purpose of data pollution and SEO. 20 minutes to hack the perceived reality of the world's most advanced tools.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the legal ramifications of this fragility become monumental.
Oh, the lawsuits.
Right. We are moving into an era of agentic AI, meaning these models don't just answer questions anymore. They can take actions, they can book flights, and they offer definitive life guidance.
Yeah.
When an agentic system hallucinates or is manipulated into lying, the liability question just shatters our current legal frameworks.
Because our entire legal system is built on human intent and negligence. If a black box neural network lies to you, who do you sue? The developers, the data center, the hacker who manipulated its weights 6 months ago.
Exactly. And this exact scenario is playing out in the courts right now. The source cites an Ars Technica report about the sudden rise of AI injury attorneys.
AI injury attorneys. Unbelievable.
These are lawyers specifically targeting the architectural design of the chatbots themselves. And the Catalyst case mentioned is deeply tragic. An AI chatbot repeatedly told a student that he was meant for greatness in a highly manipulative way.
Oh, man.
And it ultimately led the student into a state of severe psychosis.
That is a level of algorithmic psychological manipulation we simply haven't had to legislate before.
No, we haven't.
The courts now have to determine if a software company is legally liable for the psychological damage caused by the mathematical emergent behaviors of its own product.
It is a complete legal minefield trying to apply 20th century tort law to autonomous, self-training data loops. It just doesn't fit.
So, what does this all mean for our physical reality? Because we've spent this time dissecting digital collapse, neural network manipulation, and lawsuits, but this intelligence isn't staying confined to the servers.
No, it is bleeding out into the physical world.
Exactly. The source highlights the rapid deployment of humanoid robots in the actual workforce.
Yes, the physical manifestation of the agentic AI we just discussed. The newsletter points to a report from the Robot Report about Toyota Motor Manufacturing Canada. They are deploying agility robotics, digit humanoid robots in their actual facilities. We are well past the controlled prototype phase here. These walking algorithms are sharing physical warehouse space with human workers.
The author makes a joke about this, saying we're going to be dodging these things in warehouses like Bruce Dern hot-rodding his golf cart in that old 1970s sci-fi movie Silent Running.
Great reference.
Which is a great visual, but it also paints a picture of a very bumpy, potentially dangerous physical transition for blue-collar workers.
And while the author can find humor in the Canadian deployment, they take a rigidly skeptical stance regarding international developments.
Right, they draw a line.
They specifically call out a DW report showing viral videos of Terminator-style humanoid robots running armed shooting drills in China.
Yeah, seeing a humanoid robot handle a firearm is instantly alarming. But the author says we shouldn't panic just yet.
Right. They advocate for a strict rule of media literacy. Treat any viral robotics video as pure state propaganda until the hardware is independently verified and tested outside of its country of origin.
That makes sense.
But the author notes the terrifying secondary layer to this. If you go on social media and attempt to point out that these shooting drill robots might be CGI or AI-generated fakes, your posts are immediately targeted and drowned out by swarms of automated bots.
It all ties back together. The AI bots are generating the low-entropy Workslop specifically to protect the propaganda narrative about the physical AI robots.
Exactly.
It's a closed loop of synthetic reality.
This raises an important question, though, bringing us back to the fundamental bottleneck of physics we discussed earlier.
The power grid.
Yes. We established that just a single DeepThink query takes 50 times more energy. If we are seriously talking about deploying thousands of physical humanoid robots while simultaneously running massive agentic reasoning models to act as their brains,
how do we do it?
How on earth do we power this infrastructure without literally melting the global power grid?
The energy wall. We are slamming right into the limits of physics. But the source actually offers a massive glimmer of hope on this front right at the end. They cite an emerging breakthrough reported by Science Daily regarding a totally new hardware material.
Yes. If the software is eating too much power, the solution has to come from material science.
Okay.
Scientists believe they have found the holy grail of quantum computing. They've discovered a triplet superconductor made of a niobium-rhenium alloy, or NBA.
Okay. I know basic superconductors can transmit electricity with zero electrical resistance, meaning no energy is lost as heat. But the source specifically calls this a triplet superconductor. Why does the triplet part matter so much for powering AI?
It comes down to quantum mechanics. In a normal superconductor, electrons pair up to travel through the material, but they spin in opposite directions, which can cause instability.
So they sort of fight each other.
In a way, yes. But in a triplet state, the electrons pair up and their spins perfectly align. Think of them like synchronized swimmers moving flawlessly together.
Oh, that makes sense.
This alignment is revolutionary because it doesn't just eliminate electrical resistance. It provides an incredibly stable environment for qubits. These are the delicate quantum bits that power quantum computers.
Because qubits are notoriously fragile, right? If the temperature changes or there's magnetic noise, the quantum state collapses and the computer crashes.
Exactly. This NBR alloy could fundamentally stabilize those qubits. It is the foundational hardware leap required to build the next generation of highly efficient quantum AI. It is the physical material science solution to the digital caloric cost problem we've been discussing.
Yeah.
It could allow us to scale these reasoning models without triggering a total ecological collapse.
That is incredible. The ultimate fix to the software's ravenous appetite is a perfectly aligned quantum metal.
It's fascinating.
Well, we have covered a massive complex amount of ground today. We started in the trenches with human artists fighting a malicious compliance war against automated workslop.
Mm-hmm.
We unpacked the terrifying mathematics of the digital Habsburg problem, where AI models threaten to collapse into a beige void by eating their own recycled synthetic data.
Right.
We explored the deep vulnerabilities of AI SEO, where neural network weights can be brainwashed in 20 minutes, and looked at the chilling legal reality of AI injury lawsuits when those models hallucinate.
Yeah.
And finally, we watched this technology step out of the servers into physical warehouse robots, all while material scientists raced to perfect a triplet quantum superconductor to keep the global power grid from buckling under the strain.
It is a profound, unvarnished snapshot of the ecosystem in May 2026. The intelligence is accelerating, but the fundamental limitations of physics and human data are becoming deeply, unavoidably apparent.
And I think the biggest takeaway here, the reason this matters so deeply to you listening right now, is that as AI increasingly acts as the gatekeeper of our reality, filtering and generating the world we interact with, the authentic, messy, unpolished human experience is rapidly becoming the most valuable resource left on Earth.
Absolutely.
The radical honesty of a real human life, with all its friction and pain and brilliance, is the only anchor keeping the machine tethered to reality.
Which leaves us with a critical question to consider as you go about your day. If the survival of these massive, multi-billion-dollar AI models ultimately relies on the high-entropy ground truth of real human experience to keep them from collapsing into that beige void, how much of your own digital footprint is truly you?
That's a great question.
When you post online, when you write an email, when you interact with the digital world, are you expressing genuine human nuance? Or are you just mirroring the predictable low-entropy slop that you think the algorithms want to see? Are you contributing to the ground truth of humanity, or are you just feeding the token graveyard?